Ladies and gentlesores, welcome to Assessing Survival, the series where we take creatures from both reality and fiction, placing them in different periods throughout history, as well as some from outside the scope of our world. Unashamedly, to ride the hype of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie, in today's episode we'll be placing the Great Apes, bonobos, chimps, gorillas, and orangutans into the Mesozoic. Specifically, late Cretaceous North Africa around 100 to 94 million years ago. All four of these apes will be placed in the same location, a hypothetical large, dense jungle in North Africa, not too far from animals found in places like the Kem group or the Bahariya Formation. We won't be giving them any ALZ-113 or any type of enhancements. Caesar's apes would pretty much just be humans in the Mesozoic.
Can you please do humans in the Mesozoic?
As cool as it would be to put them up against dinosaurs, I think it'll be even more interesting to theorize how they might evolve differently given their individual skill sets and adaptations, especially if they're all in one place. I will be using 4 different categories to assess the ape's ability to survive. Those categories are environment suitability, food sources, strengths and weaknesses, and threats and competition. These scores will then be added up for a final assessment score, 1 to 3 being they cannot survive, 4 to 6 being that they can survive but with great to moderate difficulty, and more than 7 being they will survive with little to no difficulty. But before we jump into it, be sure to leave a like, a comment, and also subscribe. Environment suitability. Of course, the Cretaceous was much hotter globally than it is today. The average global surface temperature is estimated to have been about 14 degrees Celsius or 25 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the current average. In tropical and subtropical regions, which would include much of late Cretaceous Africa, temperatures might have rarely dropped below 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit, even during the nighttime or cooler seasons. Average daytime temperatures would easily reach 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, or more, particularly away from coastal influences. This isn't even taking into account seasonal fluctuations, which, though they would have been less dramatic than today, would have a big impact. Luckily, all of the great apes are pretty used to tropical environments and live very close to the equator in our current era. So it may get a little hotter, but it won't be a dramatic adjustment for them. Like I said earlier, we'll also be placing them in a hypothetical jungle within North Africa. While there were for sure jungles in North Africa at the time, the presence of massive animals like sauropods and hadrosaurs would make them far less common, and perhaps much less dense, which may make it more difficult for them to live their lifestyles to some degree. For chimps and bonobos, there won't be too much of an adjustment here, as they only go into trees to search for fruits, sleep, or hunt smaller primates. They spend a significant amount of their daytime hours traveling and hanging out on the ground. Orangutans, who spend over 90% of their day in the canopy, are truly arboreal, and a less densely packed jungle may be difficult for them. For gorillas, this may work in their favor, to some degree, as they seldom spend more than 10% of their day in the trees, depending on the species and individuals. Small females and juveniles do tend to climb to look for fruit more often, but the troop will spend most of their time on the ground. Orangutans 7 out of 10, chimps and bonobos 9 out of 10, gorillas 10 out of 10. Environment suitability score 8 out of 10. Food sources. The reason I chose the late Cretaceous rather than another era is because fruits make up an enormous part of an ape's diet. The late Cretaceous saw the evolution of angiosperms, flowering plants that bear fruit. However, the late Cretaceous was only the infancy of these plants, and they were not nearly as diverse as today. The amount of fruit that apes will be able to eat will be incredibly limited in comparison. We do have a few options though: ginkgo fruits, cycad cones, araucaria cones, and palm fruit. There were also figs and grapes that evolved in the very late Cretaceous closer to the KP extinction, which apes can definitely eat. So, because I'm already committing interdimensional environmental violations, I'm also going to put grapes and figs a bit earlier in the Cretaceous. This will only help a little, though. Many of the other fruits I mentioned are toxic in varying quantities. Protein and animal matter make up far less of the diet of all apes. For chimps and bonobos, protein makes up for less than 10% of their diet. Most of this consists of things like insects, monkeys, birds, and other small animals. Most of their food comes from fruit, flowers, nuts, and roots. Chimps and bonobos will more than likely adopt a more protein-based diet in order to survive. For this, they have plenty of options, such as the Cretaceous era's own insects, as well as pterosaurs, small reptiles, many smaller indeterminate theropod species, and some early mammals. They might even end up using their numbers to take down some bigger dinosaurs that inhabit the forest, as they have been observed hunting small antelope and bush pigs on occasion. The orangutan's diet consists of less than 2% animal protein, most of which consists of insects, small lizards, and birds on rare occasions. Most of their diet is, again, fruits, flowers, and nuts, but also tree bark and leafy greens. The orangutans will probably not be able to adjust to a higher protein diet like their chimp cousins, and may have the hardest time out of the 4 great apes when it comes to finding food. The gorillas, again, may be the best off out of the 4. Though protein makes up even less of a gorilla's diet, most of their diet is leaves, shoots, stems, and tree bark, all of which will presumably be abundant. While of course they do eat fruit, lowland gorillas tend to do so more in the wet season rather than year-round. Mountain gorillas, who live at higher elevations, eat very little fruit and get along just fine. In terms of food, the gorillas probably won't be much worse off in the Cretaceous. They'll have to find out what plants aren't toxic through trial and error over generations, but they're still in a much better position than the others. The other apes' dependency on fruit is going to be a serious setback for their overall score in this category. It will take many generations for these apes to find sources of food that are reliable and not toxic, or adapt digestive systems that can put up with the toxins. Luckily, with their high intelligence, this might be easier than you think, but we'll talk about that in the next category. Gorillas, 7 out of 10. Chimps and bonobos, 4 out of 10. And orangutans, 2 out of 10. Food sources score, 4 out of 10. Ladies and gentlesaurs, before we hop into the next category, I have great news. After a terrible run with the last print-on-demand company, the merch is back and better than ever. Not only are the classic Yeah Buddy t-shirts now cheaper, we now have hats, stickers, posters, and even pins. Get this beautiful poster showing all the assessing survival and even Orbis Pagona spec evo creatures, or this totally appropriate to wear in public horny turtle hat. There's plenty of great Madly Mesozoic merch that you can rock to show your support for the channel, with options to fit anyone's budget. Go ahead and click the link in the description below or in the pinned comment to take a look through the catalog. Okay, back to the video. Strengths and weaknesses. The great apes all have their own unique strengths and weaknesses that will certainly play a role in a pretty much entirely new ecosystem. Let's start with the obvious one, their intelligence. All 4 great apes exhibit forms of cultural transmission, meaning they pass knowledge and skills from one generation to the next, something that will very much come in handy for learning what foods they can and cannot eat. They can learn new skills by observing others and innovate on their own. Monkey see, monkey do. They apply their intelligence in different ways, according to their lifestyles. Chimpanzees are known for their ability to use tools, such as using sticks to fish for termites or algae, or stones to crack nuts. Chimpanzees also display complex social behaviors, including manipulation and deception for personal gain or social standing. They are capable of problem solving, planning for the future, and can pretty vividly remember past events. Bonobos' intelligence is similar to chimpanzees, but are perhaps best known for their behaviors that are heavily mediated through, loving interactions. Bonobos show high levels of empathy, cooperation, and peacemaking strategies in their communities. Orangutans are the most solitary of the great apes, which influences their type of intelligence. They are excellent at tool use, and have been observed using tools in the wild to aid in foraging, as well as building nests or crude shelters. They've demonstrated remarkable abilities in memory tests and show advanced problem-solving skills, often planning their actions in advance. Another stupendous example of their intelligence is a story from quite recently, where a lone male orangutan was observed chewing up a leaf into a fine sort of putty, and then spreading it across a substantial open wound on his face, which then healed completely within a month. There's also the ones that drive golf carts in Dubai. Gorillas are generally less inclined towards using tools than other apes, but still exhibit significant cognitive ability. Their intelligence is particularly remarkable in the context of social interactions. They can communicate using a variety of vocalizations and gestures, some of which are surprisingly subtle and complex, which perhaps is why gorillas are so proficient in learning sign language. Another one of the big strengths for all 4 of them are their dexterous and powerful forelimbs. Though not nearly as proficient as humans, all 4 of the great apes can throw things such as rocks, branches, and of course, feces at other animals with impressive force. These same throwing arms can pack a very powerful punch, striking with anywhere between 1,100 to 2,700 pounds of force, with silverback gorillas on the higher end of that range. They have a muscle mass density 4 times that of humans, and across the board are anywhere between 3 and 8 times stronger than us. While apes may be heavy hitters in their respective modern environments, This simply will no longer be the case in their new ecosystem. While they're unlikely to run into megatheropods in their jungle home, more mid-sized theropods will make movement on the ground incredibly dangerous. While chimps, bonobos, and orangutans can easily ascend into the canopy to avoid a conflict, gorillas will especially be at a disadvantage. Apes are very loud. They have a wide array of vocalizations and sounds that they use for communication, as well as intimidation. Gorillas in particular are masters at this skill. They have air sacs in their chests that they inflate and pound on, making a loud popping sound as they beat their chest. One disadvantage that is going to be really hard to get over is their means of reproduction. The apes can take anywhere between 7 and 12 years to reach reproductive maturity, and up to 15 years to reach full size. Whereas many juvenile dinosaurs may simply compete with other animals their size, juvenile apes are hardly competent in fending themselves while they mature, and rely heavily on their parents and troops to protect and nurture them. Orangutans in particular, because they are more solitary, would struggle to protect their infants against so many new threats. One of their big and probably most important strength is that they live in groups. Being able to communicate and coordinate movements, hunt, and warn each other of oncoming danger is going to be a big and very crucial boost to their survival capability. Orangutans are again more solitary than other apes, but can and have formed groups, and it may be wise to do so in order to survive. So, while their intelligence, vocalization, numbers, and arboreal capabilities may give them a unique edge in their new environment, their means of reproduction and lack of size compared to the animals around them is going to be a significant obstacle. Gorillas, 4 out of 10, chimps, 6 out of 10, bonobos, 5 out of 10, and orangutans, 5 out of 10. Strengths and weaknesses, 5 out of 10. Threats and competition. The apes will be in a unique size and weight class in this new ecosystem. On the ground, they are way out of their league. While in the modern day they have big cats to worry about, carnivorous theropods the same size as those big cats are the least of their worries. Again, I don't think they'll be interacting too much with the biggest of carnivores like Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, but there's definitely a few large theropods that will be a problem. Rugops, as well as another indeterminate abelisaurid, are small enough to likely be able to navigate through the jungle, but are still much larger than the apes, weighing twice as much as a silverback. It's likely that these dinosaurs would actively hunt them. Gorillas will again be especially vulnerable because of their ground-based lifestyle. The other apes may be able to get the high ground, throw things, and start screaming and hooting to scare it off, or just wait it out, but gorillas are stuck fighting on the ground, and it's likely going to be left to the silverback and the few males in the group to defend the rest of the troop. And as much as I like to say a gorilla could knock out a Rugops Mike Tyson style, it's not likely. The dinosaur would probably make off with the silverback in its jaws. The same can be said for Deltadromeous, who may not be able to navigate the dense jungle as well, but would certainly grab an ape when it could. There are also a number of smaller theropods, most of them being indeterminate, that wouldn't be too much of a problem for most ape troops, but could certainly snatch an unattended juvenile or adolescent ape. Other animals that inhabit the rivers that flow through the jungle would make getting water for the apes a very dangerous task. A wide array of crocodilians inhabit the waters in this area, such as Elosuchus and Stomatosuchus, both larger than crocodiles we have today. There's also Sigilmassasaurus, a smaller cousin of Spinosaurus, who as pescatarians might not actively hunt apes by the river's edge, certainly wouldn't be above snatching one. The most common threat for the apes, especially high up in the canopy, would be pterosaurs. There are several large species of pterosaurs, such as the Afrotapeyara, the Phosphatodraco, and the Alenka, that may certainly fly over the jungle in search of a meal, and an unattended juvenile or oblivious adolescent ape would certainly be on the menu. Luckily for the apes, a lot of these pterosaurs are around their same weight class despite having larger stature, with delicate hollow bones that would make a direct fight with an ape an undesirable event. So we know what their threats are, but how about direct competition? Unfortunately, there isn't a crazy amount of data on arboreal animals in late Cretaceous Africa, so there's going to be some guesswork here. There were certainly some small mammals that would have dwelled in the forest, as well as plenty of birds and reptiles that would be eating the same things as our apes. Apes in the modern world are the largest animals in their niche, with orangutans being the largest arboreal animal on the whole planet. Gorillas may have some smaller species of ornithischian on the forest floor to compete with, but without too much evidence, this is all speculative. The biggest competition for all the apes will actually actually be each other. Chimpanzees and bonobos inhabit the same environments in modern-day Africa, but are isolated from each other by the Congo River. Their diets are pretty much identical, and will be competing for the same food, and likely the same territory. I can see their interaction going one of two ways. The chimps don't recognize the bonobos as a separate species, and simply view them as smaller, weaker chimps. Male chimps are far stronger and larger than male bonobos, and may end up killing off the male bonobos and absorbing their females into their troops, slowly hybridizing over generations and creating a population of chimps that have a high concentration of bonobo DNA. The other way it could go is chimps do recognize bonobos as another species and simply kill them as a threat to their territory and resources. Both scenarios essentially end in extinction for the bonobos. Orangutans and chimps will be competing for the same fruit. The orangutans, especially males, are stronger and larger on average than the chimps, but again are solitary, and the numbers of the chimpanzees will be overwhelming. If the orangutans do choose to stick together for survival, these groups may spend more time avoiding each other than fighting. Chimpanzees won't often be competing with gorillas for food, but their interactions could be quite complex. Though they most often avoid each other when they do interact, we actually see chimps and gorillas forming friendships in the wild. But recently, as deforestation continues in Central Africa, the first documented case of chimpanzees killing gorillas occurred just 3 years ago in July 2021. This may be because the dwindling forest puts more pressure on the two animals to compete. Put them in a jungle where they will be overlapping in territory far more often, there could be much more violence than we see between them today. Orangutans and gorillas should be fine. One spending all of their time on the ground and one spending all of their time in the canopy. Interaction between them would likely be minimal. Gorillas 3 out of 10, chimps 7 out of 10, bonobos 2 out of 10, and orangutans 5 out of 10. Threats and competition score 4 out of 10. Which brings us to our final assessment score, 4.5 out of 10. Apes, though some of the most intelligent and interesting animals on the planet today, would struggle to live their same lifestyle in the late Cretaceous. Their reliable sources of food would have to change drastically through generations of trial and error. They are surrounded by animals that can and will easily kill them, and they'll even have to compete with each other. But why did I take all 4 great apes instead of just picking one? Well, because I wanted to make some interesting spec evo, of course. Come on, I know why you clicked on the video. This is my favorite part too. Kudokubwa gorilla, whose name means the glorious big gorilla, or just the Kudokubwa for short. Gorillas are the worst off out of our 4 apes. They may be the biggest of the 4, but their ground-based lifestyle leaves them vulnerable to much larger predators of the era. It is only the strongest of silverbacks that manage to survive and fend off predators, which gives us a dramatic increase in size for gorillas over generations, resulting in the Kudokubwa. They haven't changed much in terms of their anatomy or lifestyle, but are nearly 4 times the size of their ancestors, now reaching up to 2,800 pounds or 1,300 kilograms, and standing at almost 10 feet or over 3 meters on their hind legs. This size allows them to wrestle with much larger predators, such as Deltadromeous, Sigilmassasaurus, and even Stomatosuchus, with pretty good odds. They are absurdly strong, something that can be observed when they fell surprisingly large trees with their powerful pectoral muscles. Much like their ancestors, the Kudokubwa have a wide array of very subtle gestures and noises that allow them to communicate with each other to a great degree, perhaps even more complicated than before. Dominant males can instruct other members of the group to retreat, throw objects, and even push trees down to block the path of other large dinosaurs. These males are now referred to as silvermanes. The silver hair on their back now stretches up to their head and face, where it grows into a large and full lion or baboon-like mane, and a human-like beard. They also feature a much more pronounced sagittal crest, which is often a burnt orange color much like those seen in lowland gorillas. These traits are the result of a dramatic increase in testosterone, something that also makes them incredibly aggressive compared to their ancestors. Females also see the benefits of this spike in testosterone, taking a much larger role in defending the group, as well as forming their own, much less dramatic, sagittal crest. This increased aggression is reserved mostly for dinosaurs and competing bands of Kudokubwa. For interspecies relationships, they can be quite peaceful, which brings us to our next ape. Nyctalycan the night wolf chimps, or just the wolf chimps for short. Like mentioned before, the much larger and aggressive chimpanzees end up killing male bonobos and absorbing their females into their groups, creating a unique population of hybrids that we'll call chinobos. With their primary source of food, fruit, being much more scarce in the Cretaceous, as well as having to compete with orangutans, the bonobos resort to eating much more meat, adopting more predatory traits like sharper claws, forward-facing ears, and eyes much better adapted for hunting at night. They eat things like birds, mammals, pterosaurs, smaller theropod dinosaurs, eggs, and of course some fruit. Eating meat, along with other environmental pressures, has allowed them to grow larger, standing at about 7 feet or a little over 2 meters, and weighing almost 275 pounds or 125 kilograms. Using their numbers, they can take down much larger animals, such as hadrosaurs like Orangutans, though this is a rare and difficult feat. They have a much more lanky build that lends to their more actively arboreal lifestyle, using their long limbs to swing between trees, as well as their claws to scale up large trunks with speed. They live more crepuscular lives, sleeping during the height of day and night, and becoming more active around dawn and dusk, which allows them to hunt while avoiding larger predators for the most part. They'll even sometimes journey outside of the jungle during these times to prey on more bountiful quarries like young hadrosaurs and steal the eggs of larger dinosaurs. Wolf chimps interact with the kudo-kubwa on both ends of the spectrum, with some troops forming close relationships with the gorillas. Other troops may outright attack bands of kudo-kubwa, either to prey upon their young and sick, or out of personal grudges. Wolf chimps that are very close to bands of kudo-kubwa will often warn the gorillas of oncoming danger, and may even assist in fights with larger dinosaurs with the promise of a meal afterwards. Ruropithecus dendris, the farming tree apes. Orangutans, forced to rely on what they have in terms of fruit to survive, must find ways to make the best of what they have. The orangutans begin to reproduce much less and eat much more sparingly, giving the fruit of the jungle time to replenish so that they don't starve themselves out. This self-restricting lifestyle leads the orangutans to learn much more about where and how fruit grows. They begin to plant fruit seeds deliberately and work in groups to cultivate saplings, as well as protect themselves from predators and chimpanzees. This leads to the formation of permanent settlements and the development of tools. Ruropithecus are very similar to their ancestors and are in fact mostly identical in everything but size and posture. They're only a bit taller than humans, standing at a height of just over 6 feet or just under 2 meters, and weighing a little over 250 pounds or 110 kilograms on average, though they maintain their hand-like feet and often knuckle walk when not tending to their fruit trees. The Ruropithecus live in Ewok or Wookiee-style villages that sit in trees above their fruit farms, have an almost feudal social structure. A village will be ruled by one dominant male, called the daimyo. This daimyo will take almost 50% of the food grown from the fruit farms, who are tended to by serfs, subordinate males that are forced to work as farmers in exchange for the safety of the village. Between the daimyo and the serfs are the officers, who are younger or less dominant flanged males who collect fruit and enforce the servitude of the serfs. The daimyo will breed with almost all females in the village. However, they will allow the officers to breed with one female of his choosing, making sure only the strongest of the Ruropithecus may breed. Their intelligence is on par with humans no older than 12 years of age, but still nowhere near that of an adult human. They have created a variety of simple tools such as baskets, axes, spears, ropes, hammers, etc. Their most commonly used tool is this fruit picker, which is made of a long leg bone of a dinosaur with 2 hooks carved at the end, with a small palm leaf basket tied below it. The Ruropithecus communicate with various grunts and calls, as well as a unique sign language. This sign language has allowed them to more easily understand the subtle gestures and vocalizations of the kudo-kubwa, who the Ruropithecus have learned to roughly translate and communicate with. They will trade fruit with the kudo-kubwa in exchange for their services in knocking down trees, which they use as walls to keep predators and pests out of their village. These kudo-kubwa may stick around the villages and continue to collect fruit from the tribe in exchange for warding off pests and predators, creating a symbiotic relationship between the two. Their relationship with the nyctolicans are rarely so beneficial. Wolf chimps will target Ruropithecus villages, stealing fruit and sometimes even infants from their villages under cover of night. The Ruropithecus see them as pests and will lead hunts to wipe them out. It's only wolf chimp troops that have good relations with the kudo-kubwa outside of Ruropithecus villages that have any sort of positive relationship with them. Luckily for our apes, they will have another 25 to 30 million years to adapt and evolve until the KT extinction. Tool-using hominids like us have really only been around for a couple million years at most. Given this amount of time, maybe we could see the Ruropithecus evolve and develop into a society that is perhaps even more advanced than us. But one thing is for sure, these apes can't afford to monkey around. Thanks again guys for tuning in. Of course, if you have any ideas for another episode, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to talk to me and some other members of the audience, join the Discord and go ahead and introduce yourself. If you have it in your heart, join the Patreon or become a channel member to support me as the Madly Mesozoic channel grows into something special, some of which include Rhinefort14, Lex Gunn, Galactic Narwhal, Mike Yost, GreenTurret, Tyler Sparks, and the Juan Kaiser. I want to let you guys know I also have an Instagram if you guys want to go give that a follow. That'd be awesome. Anyway, see you next time, dorks.
Monkey!